Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Through the Whistle Sports. My name is Campbell, and I'm here with my partner Joseph. Just a quick thing before we get started, we're going to be talking about both the NBA as well as the NFL. That's going to be from now on, and that's also going to be in this podcast. One quick note, make sure to subscribe because we will be doing NFL previews before the NFL season starts. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be coming in about a month and a half. Um, so the first thing that we are going to be talking about is the Utah Jazz and what we think should happen with their roster, as well as whether trading Donovan Mitchell, trading Rudy Gobert, trading neither. That's what we're going to start with. So, Joseph, do you want to start talking about that?
So I think there's like just over a 50% chance either of them get moved. Everyone wants to see them both moved, and I understand why, right? It's fun when the NBA gets shaken up, but teams do not want to be bad. The Pacers would have blown up their roster 5 years ago if they were really trying to be championship contenders. They were content with just being okay. Paul George said that in his exit interview. They're content with just being okay. And the new Pacers are the Jazz, right? So if there are trades they can make to improve their roster before next season, they're going to make those moves, right? So if they can take, for example, Bojan Bogdanovic and Royce O'Neal, trade it for to the Sixers for Tobias Harris, Matisse Thybulle, and Paul Reed. Right? That gets one younger. The Sixers want to dump salary, right? We know they don't want Tobias Harris on their roster. Their GM is pretty much made it pretty clear they're going to try and get rid of him this offseason. And while it doesn't clear up a ton of money for this year, next season, they're both of those players have 1 or 2 more years on their deal, so there's going to be money off the books then for them to spend. Obviously, we're going to get into the Harden contract later, but regardless of what they do with him, you get real role players, which is what cost you this series last year, right? Doc Rivers has vocally spoken out against Paul Reed. Matisse Thybulle has not been playable in the playoffs, and while Tobias Harris was good, he's making $38 million. Tobias Harris over me. That's what Jimmy Butler said as he beat them.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think I agree with you in the sense that they want to get Tobias Harris out of there. Not even because he's a bad player, but he's just not worth that max contract
At all.
at all. He shouldn't have got it in the first place, and that's not his fault. But it's now going to be the fault of the 76ers to trade him away. And I think that the Jazz could be a good spot for them, for him, as well as possibly Paul Reed, Matisse Thybulle. Those could be good landing spots for these 76ers players. And I'm not sure if the Jazz would accept that trade of Bogdanovich and O'Neal, but I mean Bogdanovich is a 3-point shooter, and Royce O'Neal is power forward, 28 years old. Um,
And he's one of like the only good defenders on that roster. So
yep.
obviously there are going to be some question marks when you move that off. But the idea is to get Matisse Thybulle and really develop him because Donovan Mitchell doesn't have help right now. Rudy Gobert doesn't have help right now. Those two play polar opposite roles. They're both very good at one thing, but Rudy's the defender, Donovan Mitchell is the offensive player. If you can get Tobias Harris, who's also kind of a pretty much solely good for offense, and Matisse Thybulle, who will be probably the best defender they have had on that roster alongside Rudy Gobert ever.
Yeah, and I think that the Jazz are all about hitting their 3-point shots, and Tobias Harris definitely wouldn't hurt that too much. Um, and
Matisse, I see where you're going.
yeah,
Matisse Thybulle would hurt that.
yeah,
Matisse
Matisse
Thybulle would hurt
Thybulle
that.
would hurt that if he doesn't develop his shot. You know, I watched a game. He scored 11 or 12 in the first quarter, based off of 3 point shots, and I think he had a dunk. But that's very rare to see from Matisse Thybulle. But I think that he could be an offensive player if he works on it. And
If there's a
um,
place to go where there's not a lot of pressure,
it'd be the
it's to
Jazz.
the Jazz. Yeah. But let's say they say, screw that. We need a full reset, right? The best landing spots for Rudy are they're pretty simple. It's the Hornets, it's the
Yep.
Raptors, it's the Bulls, and it's the Knicks. If you have another team other than those four that I'm not thinking of, let me know. But
Hornets and Knicks.
those are like the four landing spots. And if I'm the Jazz, I don't like any of those trade offers.
Yeah, I think that all of those teams could get in, like, could put up a good package for Rudy Gobert. Um,
So
and I think
the
that the Jazz would accept it as well.
think they would accept like a lower offer for Rudy. See, I'm thinking the only lowball offer they would accept is for Donovan, because I think who's more likely to retire as a member of the Jazz, Rudy or Donovan, regardless of if they get traded or not.
I think, I think it's honestly Rudy, just because I do think that Donovan Mitchell is getting frustrated with the Jazz as well as Rudy Gobert. Um,
I think he's been frustrated since you know what happened. Don't want to
yeah,
say it and get this blocked, but since all of that went down, I don't think Donovan has been super happy with the organization. I don't think he's been happy with how they handled it. I don't think he loves the fans. I think he
yeah,
wants to be in a big market. And I hate it when people say that about people like Zion. I hated it when people said it about LeBron. I hated it when people said it about um, Kyrie when he was there. But things happen, and I think this is one of the rare instances where we have seen a player's body language, a player's performance fall off a cliff from where it was when they were winning.
yeah, and I
Donovan
think,
Mitchell wants to win.
yeah, and I think, um, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think he wants that big spotlight, and I think he wants the fans to adore him. And I don't, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think Jazz fans adore Donovan Mitchell anymore. I think
No.
they like him as a player.
Yeah, and I
I
think
don't
that
think he can.
people think that he's only going to keep growing. Other people think that he's plateaued in terms of talent, which, I mean, the plateau that he's at right now is not horrible. It's like actually pretty good right now. But some people do
So
think that he won't grow anymore.
we always talk about first option caliber, second option caliber, or third option caliber. Not going to make you answer which one you think he is yet, but I think we can both agree Donovan Mitchell is not the first option on
Nope,
a championship level team.
absolutely
He can
not.
be the first scorer, but he's not the first superstar player who will win you that championship,
And I think
right?
that's why that a lot of people are creating such absurd trades with the
Get him to the
76ers,
Lakers,
or get
to
into
get him to
the
the Sixers,
76ers, yeah,
Clippers. I've
the
seen
Clippers.
Clippers. Yep.
Yep.
Because people think he would be the perfect second or third option.
Yep.
And I don't know which I fall into. Am I a Donovan Mitchell is the an upper first option or an upper tier third option or a lower tier second option? Because obviously he's an all-star and we know this, but can he be that guy? Can he play defense well enough to be that second option?
I don't
It's
think
like right
so.
now, who are you taking, Donovan Mitchell or Tyler Hero?
Uh, I think in terms of ceiling, I would be taking Tyler Hero. Absolutely.
Ceiling, I'm taking Hero. Ceiling, are you taking Maxi or Donovan?
For ceiling, I'm taking
Hmm.
Maxi, absolutely.
Ceiling, are you taking Bane or Donovan?
Desmond Bain, that's a good question.
I think they're very similar in their ceilings.
Yeah, yeah, I think so as well, and that's why I don't like the
The
trade
difference
talks.
between these players is that Donovan Mitchell already got that max rookie extension,
Yep,
and these players are going to get like 25 to 30 mil, not the max.
yep,
If Tyler Hero gets the max, I would be shocked unless it's to like the Pistons or the Magic or like a bottom feeder team that has a ton of money to spend. Donovan Mitchell is making 35 or 36 mil. That is too much for a upper tier third option, lower tier second option.
yeah, and I
So
think
it makes it so that those teams who already have bad contracts look to trade for him. So the Knicks, Evan Fournier, that's 17, 18 million right there. You add
yep.
on a few young guys and you're right there for Donovan Mitchell. It,
Yeah, and that's why I don't like the trades or like trade possibilities that I see, that include someone like Tyrese Maxey, because obviously Maxey's ceiling is higher. He could end up being a lot cheaper, being the third option, depending on what happens with Harden, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Um, but
it's like 5 years younger too, like
yeah,
4 or 5 years younger.
4 or 5
Well,
years
under
younger.
Maxi has another step to take. Now, I don't think it's going to be next year, and that's another thing I wanted to talk about, the pressure that's going to get put on Maxi
Yep.
next year. But I think Donovan has another step. Maxi might have another two or three.
Yep. And
Um,
if we're talking about Maxi, we may as well go to his teammate James Harden and then go right over to the Maxi pressure. So for the Harden contract, what are your thoughts on what the 76ers should do with him?
Question is, do I think another team is going to offer him the max?
Not a contending team.
Do you think there's a lower end of the pack team that's gonna give him the max? Like the 5 years, 200 whatever million it is?
Mm, I
Because
don't.
what I'm trying to figure out is, do they have a choice? Do the 76ers have a choice to pay Harden or not? Harden is gonna get the bag. If he gets offered a max contract from a team, he is going to take it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's clear in how many times he's
In
um,
the max,
at
he's had it like 3 times by now.
and has asked for more money. He left the Houston Rockets because, uh,
He left the Thunder because he wanted more
or
money.
no, that's what I meant. Yeah, the Thunder, because he wanted more money. Um, he says that he wants to be here, but at the same time,
And I
Daryl.
believe him. I think Daryl Morey's like his best friend.
Yeah,
I genuinely believe that. But okay, if another team offers him the max and he accepts that, I don't think if you're the 76ers, you can't take the risk of him leaving. Now, if you had just dumped Ben Simmons for him straight up, okay, let him leave. You have 40 million off the books. Go get yourself some role players, make it your two-way option between um Maxi and Bede. You sent over 2 first-round picks,
yep,
the most valuable role player in the league in Seth Curry. Like, you don't have an option. You have to keep trying with Harden.
yeah,
Unless like Zach Levine says, I want to come play with you. Okay, you know what, Zach Levine, forget Harden. We're gonna have you come because we know you're better than Harden. They don't have that option. It's not like right there. And Embiid will leave if they let Harden walk.
I think so too, and I think that very clear. Even though I think he really loves the city of Philadelphia and he really wants to win there, something like a Giannis type player who wants to stay with the hometown team and win a championship with where he was drafted. It would be a situation where like Jimmy Butler leaving all over again. Like I don't think that Embiid just wants the 76ers to let Harden walk. Um, at the same time, we don't know if we've seen the last of prime James Harden because we don't know
Do
the
you
extent of his
honestly,
hamstring.
honestly, do you think we've seen the last of 50-point per game scorer James Harden?
I think
Do you think that's gone?
50 points per game, yes. Do I still
Think
think
he can
that?
average 50 in a week ever again?
Absolutely not.
Do you think he can average 40 in a week ever again?
In a week, no.
Hmm.
Not on the Sixers. I think
Dude, I agree with
25
that. And you
max.
know what? Any player that you're giving the max is a scorer and a negative defender in the way that James Harden is. I think you should expect them to be able to average a 40-point per game week. Like Tyler Hero. Could Tyler Hero give you a 40-point per game week?
He could. I think he could.
Tyrese Maxey
Yeah.
give you a 35 and 10 week?
I think he's done it. He might have. It might have been close to it.
That seems like something Maxey's done.
Yeah.
Harden, we're like, no, he couldn't do that. So we know he's not a max player, but because of his name and because they sent so many assets to the Nets for him,
Yeah.
they don't have a choice.
Yeah, but I think that at the same time, even Embiid has said that this is not Houston Harden anymore. He's more of a playmaker. I don't think
Which
that
I
a
have a
playmaker.
problem with. I have a problem with that. I don't think Embiid should be calling out his teammates like
Well,
this.
I I feel like this is just what Embiid does and what Philadelphia does in general. Like they'll build a player up and they'll also criticize them when they're playing horribly.
That's my
However,
point.
I do
Everybody in
think,
Philly expects it.
yeah, and I do think that Harden should have definitely been more aggressive uh, during the Miami Heat series. Say, for example, the first two games when Embiid was out, Doc Rivers came out and said we're gonna have a James Harden dominated offense, and it became Tobias Harris and Tyrese Maxey with the lead scorers of those two games, as well as
You know
going
what? I
small
think it
ball.
should have been. I think it should have been. I think Maxey should have been your second
Yeah,
option from the minute Harden was traded there. Harden should have been used off ball, which is like not something Harden's been particularly good at. He gets what's it called? He gets distracted very easily, right? He'll be off the ball and you'll just find him standing there at the hash
yep,
doing absolutely nothing. And it's like, Harden, the play is for you to be moving around off the ball so that when something happens, we can kick it to you.
yep, and
And that is something like if you're going to be a purely offensive player on a max contract, 5 years, by the way, you need to be able to do that.
yeah, and I think that even though that Harden is, we may have seen the last of 50-point or 40-point per week Harden. Um, I don't think that just giving him up, even let's just say that he asked for the max and the Sixers decide to give it to him. So he would be still the second option, even though Maxi probably should be. But at
I
the
think
same
Maxi would
time,
take I think Maxi would take it from him next year.
yeah, but I think that at the same time, he's been such a good mentor. Like I've seen, like during games, he's been such a good mentor to not just Maxi, not just Embiid. Literally everyone on that team has started to like embrace what he has to offer as
Which
part
is
of
still a
something.
lot.
Yeah, he can still offer
Still
a
a lot.
lot, and people don't realize. I read something. It was the top 10 assists, like games, for the 76ers this year. Seth Curry had one 12-point assist game, or not 12 point, 12 assist
12
game,
assists. Yep.
and James Harden had the rest up to 16 or something.
Which is insane. The guy came on the team super, super late.
Super late.
Now, there are arguments against that, which is like, oh, the offense just goes through him. He has the ball. Okay, but he did it, right? He's
Yep.
still a viable playmaker. He lost that first step. You know that quick first step badge in 2K?
Yep.
It's gone now. He simply doesn't have it anymore.
Maxey has that now.
Maxey has it, which is why I'm saying you need that on a guy who's when you have a big man, right? When you have a big man like that, the goal of the guard should be to get around the screen and down to the hoop.
Yep.
Harden simply can't do that anymore. They can trap him because he's not fast. He's not. And
Yep.
also, we've seen every single year Harden come into training camp out of shape.
Yep.
What happens when in 2 years, his metabolism isn't as good? He's not in as good of shape because he's older. That happens. It's the natural process of life, and he can't cut the weight.
Yeah.
He's just this fat guy standing out there on the court. I love Harden. Prime Harden was one of the best players ever to watch. At 1 month where he literally averaged like 40 points per game and 10 assists, that was some of the best basketball ever. Giannis won the MVP over him. He shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Harden was insane that year.
Yeah. And
But that is not who we have anymore. And it's we're still paying him like that's who he is. That needs to stop. We need to stop paying players off the name.
yeah, and I
Because
think
that's how you end up with Russell Westbrook on the Lakers making $47 million.
yeah, that's very true.
Seth Curry only making 8.
Yeah, being the best role player is
Exactly.
the thing is that Harden doesn't deserve the max contract, but I think that giving him up would be more hurtful to the 76ers than giving him a max contract.
I agree because contracts are movable.
Yeah.
The only contract in the NBA that really isn't movable is the John Wall contract. And that's because since the minute he got that contract, he has not played.
Yeah.
I think he's played 23 games, I believe the number is.
Yeah, and I think didn't he get injured and then got traded? I think it was
He got
something like
injured and
that.
got traded,
Yeah.
which just like I don't know, man. But I know this isn't on the docket, but bringing up the idea of overpaying a player and like the end of their deal just being bad. Chris Paul
Yep.
4 years, 120 million, I believe the deal is. What are the odds towards the end of that deal they attempt to move it? I know we are a year removed from the Suns being in the finals. I know that this can be seen as an overreactionary take,
They won't
but
be back.
I agree they will not be back to the finals with that core of Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges. They will not. With the end of that contract being so much money, I get he's a good culture guy, but 30 million for a guy who can give you one perfect game. I believe he had 3 solid playoff games. Rest were stinkers. They were terrible.
Yeah, he has very good IQ.
Got another contract. He got another contract
Yeah.
after being labeled one of the most overpaid players in the league.
Yeah.
Is that what Harden's going to be doing? Right? Because Harden this year was not worth it. Do you think $46 million for Harden this season was worth that money? Or would you rather have 8 million Seth Curry, 10 million Bogan Bogdanovic, 11 million Kevin Huerter on that 76ers team? I think I'd rather have that shooting. So Harden is, just because of who he was traded for, is going to finesse his way into another bad contract in almost the same way Chris Paul did, except Chris Paul earned that money because his team went to the finals.
Yep.
Harden didn't earn it. He's only going to get it because of who he was traded for.
Yeah.
That's what frustrates me.
And I think that the issue is we just don't know with Harden if his prime is done or if he was just really injured this year because he had a grade 2 hamstring strain in the playoffs and played on it because Irving
Hamstrings
was
just
out,
Hamstring injuries don't necessarily go away, though. They
and they don't.
linger, and we've seen that since his MVP year.
Yeah,
He's dealt with that hamstring. So I guess only time will tell, but I hope Harden doesn't get the max. I hope he takes a pay cut, and
I
I
do
hope they
too.
trade Tobias Harris, and I hope they get role players, because two players I'm actually rooting for, three, I guess. Matisse Thybulle is one of my favorite players. The defense that man brings is unmatched. If that man gets a 3-point shot, he is one of the
He,
most valuable role players in the entire league.
yep.
Joel Embiid, bro has not won an MVP, but he has been right there. In his prime, I guarantee you, it's going to be one of the shorter primes, and we're going to be out of it, and we're going to be like, what happened to Embiid?
Especially
He's just
because
a
of
top
injury.
five player. Exactly. And Maxi, he's a rising star. You know what's always fun? Rooting for the rising stars. And that's what gets us right into our Western Conference Finals series. The rising star, Luka Doncic.
Yeah.
Can he do it? I
Uh,
don't think he can.
Against the Warriors, I don't know if the Warriors exactly have what it takes. Then again, I don't think that the Mavericks do either, because
Hmm.
the Warriors in 5 games beat, I guess, Nikola Jokic, the MVP. Um, they didn't have Jamal Murray. They didn't have Michael Porter Jr. So who they beat Nikola
And
Jokic, and that was it.
you're asking who have they beat? And the answer is Jokic, Ja for like 3 games, I think. Ja was out for half that series.
Yep.
People forget that somehow. Desmond Bain lit them up and stole a game.
Yeah, they stole a game and they blew the Warriors out.
Hmm.
Yes, it was at home. Yes, anything else you want to say, but they
I
did that.
have I have a take. The Eastern Conference Finals is the NBA Finals. Whoever
You
wins
know,
that is winning the finals.
I personally, for me, I would like to see the Mavericks go to the finals, but I do agree that it's either the Celtics or the Heat. Um,
Ranking it, I'm going Celtics should be the favorites. Heat should be second. Warriors should be third because Curry and just the that PTSD lineup. That
yeah,
lineup's insane. And then four Mavericks. Now, could I see the argument for Warriors over Heat? Could I see the argument for Heat being last? Yes, I could. Because they still have those same problems. But we just saw last night Heat beat the Celtics in game one.
yeah, and I expected the Celtics to take game one, not even just at halftime, but before the game had started. Um, but that series is going to be interesting. I think that the favorites, it's definitely a toss up between the Celtics and Heat, but I think that the Celtics should be favorites, and then the
I think the
Heat,
Celtics should be favored, yeah.
and then the Warriors could just be a sleeper team. But I'm taking the Mavericks over the Warriors, so Celtics, Heat, Mavericks, Warriors.
I I, I think I don't think Luca has the power to beat the Warriors.
I'm not sure if he
And be
does this year. He he could.
hey, this is another conversation for another day, but Jalen Brunson's a free agent,
Yep.
and Tim Hardaway Jr. currently isn't playing. So everyone makes it seem like, oh, Jalen Brunson's going to get paid too much money and they're going to have to let him go and Luka's going to leave. No, they're going to use a few second rounders and they're going to get off the Tim Hardaway Jr. contract and
Yep.
then bam, Jalen Brunson absorbs all Tim Hardaway Jr.'s money and they're fine.
Yep.
So I think this core will be back. I'm not counting them out because Luka is insane, and that PTSD lineup has one of the worst defensive ratings of all time because there's one person in that lineup who can defend, and it's Andrew Wiggins, who is a
Yep.
slightly, and when I say slightly, I mean slightly above average defender.
Yeah.
He has the size, he has some skills, but he is not guarding a top 3 player in the world in Luka Doncic. He's just not.
Yeah, I don't really see any player on the Mavericks or on the Warriors, I should say, that would be guarding well. That would be guarding Luka Doncic well. Um,
Maybe it's not about guarding Luka. Maybe it's about going after Luka on the defensive side of the ball.
it,
Maybe it's about making Luka work on defense. So when it comes time for him to play well on offense, he's gassed.
yeah, and I think
And, th-
that
and then you're gonna rely on Spencer Dinwiddie and Jalen Brunson. And do you think Spencer Dinwiddie and Jalen Brunson are gonna give the Warriors buckets this year or this season?
Dinwiddie and Brunson will be good for 1 to 2 games this series. I will say that. That happened with the Sun series. They're on
Happened with the Jazz series.
happened with the Jazz series. They're going to give you 1 to 2 games when they're playing amazing. Luka Doncic is going to be who he is. Finney Smith, good 3 and D guy, and then Davis
Who
Bertans.
I don't know what Davis Bertans. I don't know how many minutes he's going to get in the series simply because Draymond. I don't know. I think Kaliba might get more minutes
I
just
think
because the defense he brings.
he does too. I do too. And his minutes did vary uh, during the Phoenix series. But he isn't a liability, which I think is good for a backup player coming off the bench even for a few minutes. Um, but yeah, I think that the Western Conference Finals is going to be very interesting. Um,
Yeah, I'm still gonna take Warriors probably in 6. Yeah, I think I'm gonna take Warriors in 6. And it's not. It's like I hate using Patrick Beverly as an example because I do not like anything he has been doing on going on ESPN. I think it's a little bit of a you know what move. The guy
yeah,
got paid and now he's just gonna do whatever to talk. And it's Patrick Beverly. Yeah, I get it, but it's annoying. But he said nobody's scared of Chris Paul on defense. No, that man cannot defend. I agree. This version of Chris Paul is not a defensive player. Now, Curry was just called a two-way player in an interview, which I do not agree with.
yep,
He's not a scrub. And Chris Paul on the defensive side of the ball is a scrub. Chris Paul is barely 6 feet tall. Curry is a little bit bigger. He's a little bit stockier. And while I don't think he will be able to defend him, he's not a traffic cone. So I think he's going to give him a little bit more of a run for his money, and I think it's going to make it so that Luka has to work just a little bit harder on the defensive side of the ball or on the offensive side of the ball. And then if they can make him work harder defensively, I think you're going to need more than just 1 or 2 games from Brunson and from Dinwiddie in
yeah,
order to win
absolutely.
this series.
And if they only give you that 1 or 2 games, I don't really see anybody else besides Finney Smith that could possibly help bring you um, help bring you to take those games. Because I mean,
Yeah,
Finney Smith has been able to come back. Him and Dinwiddie have been able to come back from like double-digit leads in the fourth quarter, basically by themselves. But I don't think that in the playoffs against the Warriors that would happen, or not that it couldn't, or not it could happen, but I don't think that the Warriors would lose in that game due to that.
yeah, there's no other game changers in this series. There's no other shot makers in this series. And like the Warriors have just so much. And Game 6 Clay is a real thing, and that's
Yep.
why I say Warriors in 6. Like it still exists. So I'm gonna go with Warriors in 6. What are you gonna take?
Um, I'm trying to not let my bias get to me. because I really would like to see Doncic in the finals,
I want to see the Luka versus Tatum matchup.
even if he would
Bad.
get destroyed, which I think
Want to know
against
why?
the
Because
Heat.
Luka and Tatum are two like future top 20 players all time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I believe so as well.
And and if we have a finals matchup of two top 20 players of all time, and this is how little help Luka has, that is like the next Magic versus Bird. So I wish I could take the Mavericks. I just can't.
Yeah, I think that I'd take the Warriors in 7. However, I think that the Mavericks could also take it in 7.
Okay. So games, it's going to 7 regardless of who wins.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Celtics Heat. This is a series that I didn't think was gonna happen. I thought the odds of this series happening were super low. And you can say, oh, it's because Chris Middleton was hurt. It's because Embiid was hurt. It's because it's because Ben Simmons was hurt. You can say whatever you want, but this is the matchup that we have. It's a good one. It's like a very fun, entertaining rematch, and these teams have met constantly
Yep.
in the playoffs. Other than last year, I believe they've met like, I think the number was 6 times in the last 10 years. It's something absurd because those Celtics teams in the mid 2010s were meeting the LeBron James led, you know, and the Celtics Heat rivalry is a little bit of a weird one because it's not like the Yankees or the Red Sox. It's not like one of those all-time great ones. But there's a little tension between those fans that I didn't notice until I started watching this particular series. There was a guy in the crowd who was yelling, "Jimmy Butler's overrated" all game. And then when they put it on the scoreboard that he hit 40 points, it was posted on ESPN. The guy's face was like this. He was in utter shock, and then other fans were yelling at him. There is a little bit more of a rivalry than I ever expected.
Yeah, and we had this matchup 2 years ago in the Eastern Conference Finals in the bubble. Now you can talk about the bubble was skewed, but I don't think it was as much.
I don't either.
People like to joke during the first and second round series, the Miami Heat benches where a lot of them were empty, so people were saying, "Oh, the Heat were good in the bubble because they didn't have fans
Yeah,
either way." But I don't. I think that the Miami Heat were underrated that year in the bubble, anyways, and that conference finals was very. Um, it was fair, and it could have been. It wasn't expected, but it was definitely a real possibility.
yeah. Last night, I think the reffing was pretty bad.
Yeah, I didn't. So I didn't rewatch
It was
all of it.
bad both ways. I watched the second half and I rewatched the first half. It was a blowout by the time I had tuned in, but it was pretty bad. I There were some questionable like goaltending calls. And look, the last series it ended with a
Yep.
Bam Adebayo block on Jason Tatum, and we cannot have the wrong call on at the rim calls because these are two teams who love to take the ball to the hole. And if that is happening every game, and we are getting one out of every 15 goaltend calls called incorrectly, it's gonna be a long game. And these are two high level defensive teams too.
Yep.
So the more fouls you give them, the less entertaining the series is gonna be for the fans. And all I want is a good series. Now I may have picked the Celtics beforehand to win the finals, so I'm gonna stick with them in 7. I think it's going to be a really fun series, and I will not be mad if the Celtics lose this series, unless it's in like 4 or 5, then I'll be mad.
Yeah, I think that this could honestly go either way. I said the same with the 76ers. I didn't know the extent of Joel Embiid's injury, and that
Yeah.
actually affected him a lot. We didn't realize with his torn ligament in his thumb. that it would be more of an issue than his orbital fracture. Um, but you could see it when he was trying to shoot. It was such a pain. Um, but yeah, I
If you
think that I would take the Heat, the Miami Heat, to win this series in what they're yeah, they're the number one seed, so I'd take them in seven.
Mhm. Those we both wow.
Yeah,
All right.
we split.
What do you okay, who do you think the X factor in this series is?
For both teams.
Yes.
Hmm. I think that Jalen Brown is going to be important,
Yes.
and Max Struess is going to be important.
See, I would agree with you if I wasn't so confident Max Strus was going to be good.
Yeah, I think.
I I trust Max Strus more than I trust this guy, Kyle Lowry. When
Yes,
Kyle Lowry is not playing, the Heat look better.
against the
He's a
76ers, that's so true. Yep.
yes, he did. And last night, I can't say it was obvious, but Max Strus was a very good shot creator last night.
Yep.
He was making buckets, and what do the Heat need? Shot creation. Because before the season, before the postseason started, one of the reasons I simply couldn't pick them was because they only had two in my mind. But Max Strus has been that big, like, oh wow, this guy is good player for them.
Yep.
Jalen Brown, it's like every time he gets to the rim, when he's on, he's making everything at the rim. When
Yep.
he's off, he's getting blocked. It's like a travel, it's a bad pass to a turnover. So whenever you watch the first quarter and Jalen Brown is getting everything he wants at the rim, hammer the Celtics money line because that's a sign they're gonna win.
Yep. And I think going back to Kyle Lowry, I would watch him against the 76ers. Even if he didn't have an injured hamstring, I don't think that he's as good as he was even before this year, or on the or when he was on the Raptors either. I just don't think that he's able to get to the rim as quickly. Um, I think that most of the time I watched him try to draw fouls on the 76ers that he just is not able to draw anymore, and he was
Yeah.
getting very frustrated, and by the time that they realized that he wouldn't be any help and he'd go back to the locker room, it was too late for the Miami Heat to get anything going in that game.
Yeah, I agree. Can you pause the recording real quick?
Yeah. Yeah. And so one last point for the NBA, and we are actually changing this up due to the time. We are going to finish off this podcast. It may be a little bit shorter than an hour, which is fine, but we're going to be talking about NFL probably next week or in the coming days. You'll see a new podcast coming out. But for the final thing that we're going to be talking about in this episode is going to be the reffing in the NBA Finals. And for me personally, I think that flagrants, especially, they seem to be getting like they seem to be very soft during the playoffs this year, and I think that's not very fair to the players because it's aggressive basketball. Joel Embiid, he got hit in the face. I don't think it was a flagrant. I think it was actually an offensive foul on Siakam. Whatever that that doesn't matter. And what I'm trying to say, he said after the game, I think he broke my face. No, actually, I think so. But it's all good. It's the playoffs. So he wasn't mad at Siakam. He didn't think that it should have been a flagrant. He should have been ejected. The players know this. And I think that was a perfect call for it being an offensive foul because of what Siakam did. Um, but then I also do want to quickly talk about the fans and uh, obviously if
So
you
just real quick. Flagrant requires intent,
intent,
right?
yes,
And I think that has been lost,
yeah,
like completely lost in how officiating has been done. And I get it. Officials have Twitter.
Yep.
Officials have the internet. Officials see the threats fans make to them if they make a bad call. Now, some
Absolutely.
fan bases are much worse than others.
Yep.
That is why the Philly and Toronto series was
Yes.
refed so badly. Because you know what? I'm sorry if you're a Philly fan or a Toronto fan, but
Both.
both of your fan bases are super dedicated,
Yep.
super loyal. But there are the odd ones who are insane and they make death threats constantly. I see
Yep.
it all over Twitter. It's like it needs to stop because it is 100% affecting the way the officiating is happening.
Yeah, and I think that even Nick Nurse during the series, after he lost game two, he was complaining the entire series, even when the calls most of the time were going his way, which is that's what he does. But after the games, he would be constantly complaining about the refs. And my personal opinion is he should have gotten fined. And Joel Embiid, when he made criticism, he got fined. I think that he also should have been fined. But Nick Nurse did not get fined at all. And I think both Embiid, when he criticized the refs, as well as Nurse, they both should have been fined.
Do you know the other thing about that? Fines, they take money, right?
Yeah.
I think these players or coaches care about money.
No. But I think
You know the reason they make fines? It's to put a number out there. Like, hey, they did this, they made us mad, we're taking this amount of money from them. And to the average person, 50 grand is a ton of money.
yep.
Now, they fine based on like a percentage of paycheck, I believe.
I think
So
so,
if
yeah.
you're fining head coach and you fine him 10K, fans are going to be like, he just dropped the F bomb. Joel Embiid does this and he gets fined 75K.
Yeah.
The NBA hates the 76ers. No. No, it's because head coach and player are completely different.
Yep.
Now, should both carry themselves with professionalism and make
Absolutely.
smart choices? Absolutely. Is that always going to happen? No. Should the coaches be punished more than the players because they don't make as much as them? No.
No.
That's the issue. The fining has nothing to do with it has nothing to do with the money. It has to do with the league wanting to look good
Yep.
to fans, to sponsors, to their advertisers, all of that. And that is what it comes down to. Fining doesn't do anything. Draymond Green went on TNT and said, I don't give an F about the fines.
Yep.
And got fined like 35K, I believe.
Yeah. And
Don't care.
it's the thing that they don't care, but it makes the NBA look better, but at the same time,
What
you
doesn't
know,
make them look better
it
is the bad
doesn't
refereeing.
it doesn't make them look better. And one quick thing about the fans, there was one specific moment. I love getting into arguments on Twitter with people who don't know basketball. I'm just going to say one quick thing about that. Somebody was talking about Kyle Lowry versus Joel Embiid. He was talking, I think it was after Danny Green tore his ACL. And everyone was like, oh, Embiid just flopped down onto Danny Green. And so I was like, you guys, this is not the place to do that. And it got into this discussion about what Kyle Lowry did against the Hawks. Literally ran into a player to try and draw a foul, and they said, "Oh, that's just basketball IQ and that's veteran play." And so I made up the good point, and I was like, "So when Embiid is trying to draw a foul and he flops like that, you guys say that's bad for basketball, but when Kyle Lowry does the same exact thing, you say that is just veteran play, and that is what basketball IQ is." And I think that it's gonna happen, and with fans' bias. However, I do think that people should be mindful of that, because saying veteran veteran play versus bad for basketball are like they're the same exact thing,
Yeah.
and they're it's being treated differently even for I don't want to say unbiased fans, but like fans of neither team. So
Yeah, fans need to reel it in.
yeah, and they
Fans should
won't.
want good basketball, not their points or their hot takes
Yeah,
to be proven correct. Right? Like, I don't care if the Celtics win this series. It'd be great for me to be proven correct, but at the end of the day, I would rather have a 7-game series where the Heat win than
yeah,
a 4-game series where the Celtics win and we have 4 games of basketball.
that's just much better for basketball in
We
general.
have, at most, we have 20 games of basketball left
I believe
the
so. Yes.
entire year. At most. At least, we have 9.
Yep.
I want those games to be fun. I don't care about, oh, this guy's a dirty, dirty player. This guy's flopping. I want good basketball.
Yep.
And that brings me back to the point where referees need to be better. And in the NBA Finals, if they do not have a good crew for every single game, is going to frustrate me.
Yeah.
Because while the refs in the NFL are pretty bad with like the pass interference and the holding calls, one call doesn't necessarily change the entire game in the
Yeah.
NFL in 99% of the circumstances. But in the NBA, if the officials constantly do similar things, right? So they'll do the goaltending was the issue last night. If that kind of stuff continues to happen, it's going to make the finals really hard to watch, especially if a team like the Mavericks makes it in. And then it's like,
Yep.
okay, this is like, I think it's Celtics in 4. It's over. This is frustrating. That was not a good end to the NBA season. I want to end it off on a high note. So, NBA, please have good refs for the finals.
Yeah. And I don't want to talk
Put your best
about
crew.
yeah.
Put your best crew out.
And I don't want to talk about specific officials right here, but I will say that some of the choices and motives for some of the referees, I won't name any names, but you probably know some of them. They were caught, or not caught specifically, but uh, knew a lot of other refs who got caught gambling on games, and there's evidence that they.
I don't think there's much of that happening anymore, but I think that they are like refs are aware of the over under, they are
Yep.
aware of the whether it is +6.5, they're aware of those lines, and I think they officiate subconsciously through them.
And at the end of the day,
Same
yeah,
way they officiate subconsciously through all the death threats people are sending
yep,
them on Twitter. So fans need to be better,
yeah.
and that's it.
And I think that at the end of the day, like the over under and that happening and them trying to make sure that um, those go according to plan, I think that helps the NBA as a business, but it doesn't help their case as a fair, as being a fair league in general. And I think that's something that they're gonna
Even
have
if
to
they're
work
not
on.
even if they're not purposely doing it, that
Yep.
subconscious bias, it's 100% there, and they know he may not be trying to, but it's something the league needs to maybe like don't show them the lines.
Yeah.
Like, why is that so hard to do? Like, I want good finals games. If the Celtics are favored by 9.5, I don't want them to keep it I don't want them to make sure the Celtics get all those calls late down the stretch so that they win
Yep.
by more than 9.5. That's going to be annoying.
Yeah.
That's going to be really, really annoying.
And I
So I
think,
just
yeah,
hope they do. Just hope they make the rest a little bit better. Just a little bit better.
And I think that specifically is bad for basketball, not Joel Embiid or Kyle Lowry flopping.
No, I'm over the flopping. It's a part of the game at this
Yep.
point, and refs just need to see through a little bit more. Like if they were slightly better and they didn't see, like if they were just a little bit better, basketball would be so much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
I don't want bots. I don't want that like they're trying to do in the Major League Baseball right now.
Yeah.
I just want them to be a tiny bit better overall, and that will really make the games more enjoyable.
Yeah. And
Guys,
yeah, I believe we could end it here. That's about 55 minutes.
that's perfect.
So once again, we will be at some point doing a preview for all NFL teams. So make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that.
As well as draft prospects.
Yes, that's
A
true.
lot of people are their team drafts a player and they have no clue
Yep.
who it is. I was one of those people. When my team drafted Kyra Lewis Jr. in 2020, I was like, who is this?
Yep.
I don't watch college basketball at that point, and now that I'm starting to learn these players, it is a lot of fun to pick a guy in the draft and really attach yourself to them.
Yep.
Even if they do good, even if they do bad, it is one of the most fun parts of college sports in general. Um, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And at some point, it could be today, it could be in the next few days, we are going to be talking about a few things going on in the NFL. I won't give out like specifically what we'll be talking about, but make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that coming up in the next few days. And once again, we want to thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Bye bye.